on our social media pages. That's KBC Channel 1 on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And you could also send me a shout out. My pages are also on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. Cynthia Nyamai is the username. Now, the government has announced plans to increase the salary of National Police Service officers, National Prison Service officers, and National Youth Service officers by 40% in the next 3 years. Speaking in State House, Nairobi, after receiving recommendations from the David Maraga-led task force, President William Ruto says the salary adjustments are aimed at boosting the morale of men and women in uniform. And as Timothy Kipnusu reports, it is during the occasion that the head of state said this administration will not condone corruption in the public sector.
The task force was asked to examine and review the various aspects that touch on the welfare, terms and conditions of service.
On Thursday, the former Chief Justice David Maraga-led team presented the recommendation report on police reforms to President William Ruto. It is here that the President announced plans to increase the remuneration of National Police Service officers, National Prison Service officers, and National Youth Service officers.
I want to assure our men and women in uniform that as they put their lives at risk to protect Kenya, the government of Kenya and the people of Kenya will stand by them to make sure that they serve in conditions that are sensitive to the responsibilities and the huge sacrifices that they are making.
During the occasion, the President pledged to deal decisively with corruption in the public service.
Corruption has been cited quite frequently and described as systemic, endemic, entrenched, deeply embedded, and rampant. Clearly, we have a serious problem in there, in that we have never developed in these services the capacity to serve the nation to any satisfactory standard. And as a result, the services have become increasingly suboptimal and problematic.
You must also give back to society by giving commensurate service. We want to see improvement in terms of the way you serve the people of Kenya. We want police officers to do away with corruption as a way of also appreciating the reforms that have been initiated by the President.
The issue of underfunding came into the fore, with the President promising to channel funds in the 3 forms of service to improve on service delivery.
The task force has diagnosed 4 primary problems in our services that have hampered effective and efficient service delivery, rendered them resistant to growth and transformation, and collapsed their stature in the eyes of many Kenyans. The problems are broadly underfunding.
The government also announced that no officer will serve for more than 3 years in a single station. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has in the meantime lauded the Interior Ministry for general improvement of security situation in the country.
For the last 1 year, Your Excellency, serious incidents of crime have not been reported, and crime has been controlled to what you call acceptable levels. The guns are silent in North Rift, in Northern Kenya, and other than petty crime, there is general improvement of the security situation in the country.
The David Maraga task force that consists of 20 members was appointed by President William Ruto on 21st December 2022 to look into improvement of terms and condition of service and other reforms for members of the National Police Service and Kenya Prison Service. Timothy Kipnusu for Prime Edition.
Azimio One Kenya leadership is now threatening to recall countrywide protest should the national dialogue talks fail and the government fails to address the rising cost of living. NAK Kenya party leaders have also accused Kenya Kwanza government of turning a deaf ear on challenges bedeviling the nation, ranging from high taxes and corruption. As Joseph Wakuhungu reports, analysts are warning of the possibility of the country being plunged into anarchy following Azimio's fresh demands.
With the bipartisan talks entering the home stretch, the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya faction are insistent they will only agree to the outcome of the talks if the sticky matter on reducing the cost of living is addressed, which includes lowering taxes. In a press briefing Thursday, Azimio co-principal Martha Karua claimed that Kenyans are suffering from high taxes. Among the demands is lowering of the tax levy of VAT from 16% to 8%, and scrapping the house levy.
The cost of fuel, which is pushing the cost of living upwards. We want the additional tax of 8% removed with immediate effect.
Karua threatened to rally Kenyans back to the streets to hold the government accountable if the dialogue talks fail.
We have already talked about the cost of living. It's just to remind us sovereignty belongs to the people.
Her remarks come even as the National Dialogue Committee meeting ended in limbo after Kenya Kwanza and Azimio la Umoja members disagreed on critical proposals touching on reducing the cost of living. Political analyst Maliba Arnold Nyanjai is of the view the fresh demands by Azimio might lead to anarchy if unchecked.
The demands with whatever comes out of it is actually rigid and fixed, and therefore it has to go through that way. It offends, of course, the governance structure that we give ourselves. We are opening up a new center of governance. We are opening up a new center of decision-making outside of what is constitutional. That in and of itself is actually extra-constitutional governance that they are bringing in, and it has no other better word than anarchy.
Meanwhile, Azimio leader Raila Odinga has labelled the government-to-government oil deal with Gulf companies a grand scam. According to Raila, the deal has led to inflated fuel prices.
Lakini thibitisho iko hapa ya kwamba sio mpango ya serikali kwa serikali. Serikali ya Kenya hajaweka mkataba na serikali ya Saudi Arabia au ya Emirates. Hii ni kati ya wizara ya kawi yani ya wa Kenya na makampuni moja ya Emirates na nyingine ya kule Saudia inaitwa Aramco.
He has challenged President William Ruto to make public the memorandum of understanding Kenya signed with the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission to investigate the deal.
Why have things moved from bad to worse since the deal was signed? Well, the deal was a scam for which we now demand full disclosure and full accountability.
Our question therefore to Mr. Odinga is what further definition of government to government would this be seeking if a contract signed between a state-owned enterprise in Saudi Arabia and one in UAE and a state ministry in Kenya is not government to government?
With the bipartisan committee expected to file its report in 10 days, it is now a game of wait and see if the two factions will arrive at a common position. For Prime Edition, I'm Joseph Wahungu.
The National Assembly has approved the deployment of 1,000 police officers to Haiti to deal with the armed street gangs in the Caribbean nation. National Assembly Administration and Internal Security Committee Chair John Tongoya, who tabled the motion, said the decision was arrived at following recommendations by committee members from both houses. As Frederick Pasayo reports, Kenya was picked to lead the UN-packed multinational year-long security mission.
Pursuant to the provision of Article 248A, this House approves the deployment of officers of the National Police Service to the multinational security support mission to Haiti.
Thursday morning at the National Assembly chambers, the debate on deploying 1,000 specialized police officers to Haiti would again divide the plenary.
The House is not in its proper position, is not in its proper place to adjudicate or in any way, in any other way, deal with the matter before it under Order 9.
To avoid this selective amnesia by my brothers and to maintain the dignity of this House, this debate should be held in abeyance, and if the Parliament wants to be a party, it should apply to be a party. Once it's determined, then we can come back to debate it.
Ugunja Member of Parliament will not relent. further adding that the House will be breaking the law by approving the deployment of 1,000 police officers to Haiti. In a quick rejoinder, the majority side fired back.
There is a retinue of precedents on what the courts can and cannot injunct Parliament from doing. And part of that, Honorable Speaker, is that the courts cannot injunct Parliament from doing what is constitutionally the Parliament's mandate.
We are mandated to debate a matter that has been moved to us by the National Security Council as provided for under Article 240, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Minority Leader, you are out of order. We debate, we agree, or we drop it.
Both sides sitting on the fence.
I think it would be good for members not to delve into the merits of the matter. So could you give us guidance on what the merits of the case are?
By taking police officers who are supposed to protect them away from them to a land called Haiti. You can only protect their lives by enhancing the numbers and enhancing the security amongst your citizens.
Kenya in 2018 was recognized and 28 officers by the United Nations and promoted. In fact, the United Nations took one of the officers, the Chief Inspector of Police, Kerubo, and retained in the UN because of the deployment that had been done to Southern Sudan.
But the Deputy House Speaker Gladys Sholei would make the ruling.
And pursuant to the provisions of Article 248A, this House approves the deployment of the officers of the National Police Service to the Multinational Security Support Mission. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? Nay. The ayes have it.
The ruling eventually gave the nod for the deployment of 1,000 police officers to Haiti. In the meantime, a ruling challenging the deployment of 1,000 police officers is set for January 26, 2024. Parsai Frederick, reporting for Prime Edition.
The political intrigues of Meru County appear far from over as it now emerges that 22 residents drawn from Meru County have petitioned the County Assembly to impeach 11 County Executive Committee members and the Secretary to the Cabinet at the county. Reports, however, indicate that the Governor, Kawira Mwangaza, is ready for a dissolution of the county government with the signature collection exercise needed to meet with the constitutional threshold set to begin on Monday. Our reporter, Khalid Abdullahi, looks at the unending political theatrics of Meru County and what lies ahead for the Meru electorate.
In the wake of Meru Governor Kawira Mwangaza's successful evasion of a second impeachment in the Senate, the strained relationship between the county executive and the assembly persists. The first-time governor holds that she was being frustrated by members of the county assembly who she said have made it impossible to deliver on her mandate. Governor Mwangaza alleged a plan by the MCAs to impeach the county executive committee members to further frustrate her administration. In view of this, the embattled governor has agreed to support signature collection towards kickstarting the dissolution exercise of Meru County Assembly. But what does the Constitution say on the suspension of the county government?
Commission of inquiry. You remember, like in the Makweni case where we had Nyaoga, who was leading the commission of inquiry. What the commission will be able to do is we'll be able again to investigate afresh the allegations, the grounds, the basis that have been laid forth by the petitioners. In this case, perhaps the governor herself, Governor Kawira Mwangaza, and they'll be able to send that report, recommendation to the president. The Commission of Inquiry can actually say, no, the county should not be suspended. But the president, or it can again recommend to the president for suspension of the county. If the president agrees with the recommendation to suspend the county, then what will happen is he will be able to send that recommendation to the Senate. Because remember, the Senate has a direct role in protecting the interests of the counties, among them actually even looking at the recommendations for suspension or dissolution of a county. So in this case, if the Senate again agrees with the president, then what will happen is the county government of Meru will stand suspended. For how long? It is normally for suspension, it will take 90 days.
So what happens to Meru County and the embattled governor after the 90 days lapse?
The entire leadership of Meru County will have to proceed for an election. But look at where we are as a country. We do not have even IEBC. So Meru case is going to be an interesting case. It's coming at a time when some of the key institutions like IEBC are not in place. Yeah.
A petition to the president must be supported by at least 10% of registered voters. Meru County has 772,139 registered voters. They therefore need 77,000 residents to support the petition.
All this scenario is in the event that the members of the county assembly and the governor cannot be able to work, it means there is nothing that is going on. What that one means is there will be stalled projects. Even passing the budgets will be a challenge. And that's why Meru County could be staring at suspension.
The third ouster motion aimed at impeaching the governor comes barely days after the Senate gave the governor a lifeline following her impeachment case that was before Senate. On Sunday, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua said he will try broker a truce between Meru leaders and the recent unsuccessful attempt to impeach Kawira Mwangaza.
I'm sure Trevor's fans can tell that was Trevor's voice, and indeed it was. The story was produced by Khalid, but Trevor voiced it for him. We do want to take our first break, but when we come back, I want to find out, did you plant a tree on Monday? Was it just a PR exercise, or are there any benefits to a tree planting holiday? That and more coming after this.
Kote nchini matumaini, tujitahidi, tujivunie, tuendelee.
Kenya, twende mbele. NCBA, go for it.
In order to make the payment of stamp duty for land transactions a seamless process, the Kenya Revenue Authority has now made it possible for the public to make payments at the State Department for Lands and Physical Planning. From November 27, 2023, all payments for land transactions attracting stamp duty shall be made to the State Department for Lands and Physical Planning through eCitizen via paybill number 22222. Further payment instructions are available when clients click Pay on the Ardhi Sasa platform. Click on the featured link on the invoice to receive an M-Pesa menu. Enter the M-Pesa PIN and click OK. You will receive a confirmation SMS from M-Pesa. Go to M-Pesa menu on your phone, select Paybill option, enter the business number 22222, enter the account number featured in the payment instructions, enter the amount to be paid, enter your M-Pesa PIN and click Send. Ardhi Sasa, shamba lako hati safi.
We are going to destroy their marriage, their lives, everything. I mean, who created the website? You did. Who uploaded the 2 videos of Rahina? You.
It occurred to me that he actually might have fallen in love with someone else. Oh no, I doubt that.
So?
I want justice to be served!
You want justice?
Yes!
Tell me, will you also want justice when they discover that Anibal, your own son, is involved in the death of Carolina?
In a world filled with uncertainty, there is one thing we can always count on: the power of compassion and generosity. Every day, families in Kenya face unimaginable challenges and hardships. They struggle to put food on the table, provide shelter for their loved ones, and access basic health care. But today, you have the power to make a difference. By just contributing 1 shilling and 50 cents from your airtime, your generosity can provide access to sanitary pads, nutritious food, clean water, education, and life-saving medical care to those who need it most. To support this cause, please tune in to your favorite radio station under the KBC umbrella for step-by-step instructions on how to subscribe. KBC Helping Hands. Together, we can make a difference and bring hope to those in need.
Welcome back. Now, residents of Shiasala Market in Butere, Kakamega County are in shock after the body of a 38-year-old man was found hanging from a rope in the family shop. Separately, one person died in a tragic boat accident after a boat capsized in Lake Victoria. His body is yet to be retrieved amid calls for the government to deploy specialized divers to search for his body.
These were the scenes at Shiasala Market Shopping Center in Butere constituency, Kakamega County. Pain, grief, confusion and queries after the body of 38-year-old Nicholas Ahonya, believed to have committed suicide, was found hanging on a rope inside the family shop. According to the father of the deceased, his son had been missing for the 3 days, prompting a search that ended when his lifeless body was discovered. He says his son has been engaged in a marital dispute with his spouse that could have driven him to take his own life. Butere officer commanding station Julius Kipto, confirming the incident, urged married couple to seek counseling services. His body was taken to the mortuary amid queries on what could have triggered the tragic turn of events.
Kijana wangu nampata kana asubuhi leo kama amekufa. Nikapata duka imefunga for about siku 3 hivi. Nilipokuja na spare key nikaenda nikafungua. Na mimi nikaenda kuangalia hapo nyuma nikapata mlango ilikuwa iko wazi. So nilipofungua kitu ya kwanza kuona ilikuwa ni mtoto amehangwa kwa kamba.
Meanwhile, tragedy also struck in Lake Victoria waters in Kisumu. This is after one person died while 3 others escaped death after their boat capsized. 50-year-old James Okello, who died, is reported to have been accompanied by 3 other fishermen, among them his brother, when the boat capsized owing to strong winds. His family is appealing to the government to assist in retrieving his body.
Embracing the challenge-based learning program, that's the CBL, at the KCA University has helped fight exam cheating and improve the quality of education in the institution. KCA University Chancellor Professor Olive Mugenda, who spoke during the institution's 15th graduation ceremony, urged other institutions of higher learning to adapt to the program for more quality education. Challenge-based learning program involves hands-on learning while solving real-world challenges. Our reporter Bradley Agutu has more for you.
More than 4,000 students, including the first doctorate degree, received powers to read and do all that pertains at the KCA University. This even as the university being the first to adopt the challenge-based learning program in efforts to combat exam cheating.
Our students are hands-on. It's combining skills and knowledge and attitudes in one kind of hybrid product, bringing in attitudes such as what has just been mentioned, confidence in whatever they are doing out there, whether at the workplace or creating jobs, that they are confident to succeed.
Echoing his sentiments was the chairperson of the Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital and Chancellor KCA University, Professor Olive Mugenda, who encouraged other institutions of higher learning to adapt the program for more quality degrees.
Most important is that we are able to graduate our first PhD student. We have been looking forward. I would like to thank the Vice Chancellor and his team for making it happen. And I'm sure in years to come, we are going to see more and more PhD graduating from this great institution. Thank you.
Awarded the first honorary degree, Doctor of Humane Letters Honoris Causa, was Ambassador Mikhail Maina.
There might be financial, there might be other practical hurdles, but nothing should stop you to pursue your dream. For me, education has been absolutely crucial, and of course, for that reason, I was really honored to accept this honor.
Indeed, it was all celebrations at the KCA University as the 2023 class came to their graduation day. The school, which has a challenge-based learning program, helped them in combating examination malpractice. Bradley Agutu for Prime Edition.
Congratulations from right here in KBC to all the students in KCA who graduated today. Now, the Ministry of Health has initiated a widespread distribution of treated mosquito nets to combat the prevalence of malaria. Meanwhile, Kenya National Union of Nurses and Kenya Union of Clinical Officers in Kajiado have issued a 7-day strike notice citing violations of their employers' rights. More of this and other stories in the County News Roundup.
Principal Secretary for Public Health and Professional Standards, Mary Mudhoni, emphasized the effectiveness of mosquito nets as a crucial preventative measure in preventing malaria.
This is in line with what the Ministry of Health is pushing to the masses, that prevention is better than cure. We are targeting about 22 counties, high-risk areas, and that is minus the emergency counties.
Meanwhile, in Kajiado, the chair of Kenya National Union of Nurses Kajiado County, Wilson Leara, has criticized the alleged stagnation in job groups of nurses and clinical officers as he issued a strike notice to that effect.
Wauguzi ama wafanyikazi wengi Kajiado County hawajapata promotions na kwa miaka 4 ama kwa miaka 7 wengine.
Kuanzia tarehe 20 na tarehe 21 tunaenda mgomo kama hatutakuwa tumekamilishiwa mahitaji yetu hayo matatu.
In Nairobi's Kawangware area, local residents who benefit from the service of Muthetania Hospital have protested the move by Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council to close the hospital, saying there was no serious grounds that warranted its closure.
Naomba Sakaya ekuja ujue shinda ya hospitali yangu ni nini. Mimi niko qualified.
At the same time, West Pokot County Government, in collaboration with stakeholders, organized a free medical camp on several ailments, including the neglected tropical diseases, among them Kalaza and Mycetoma.
Kwa leo tuko hapa ili tuweze kuzitambua hizi maugonjwa na tuweze kupatia wagonjwa hao matibabu wanayohitaji.
Elsewhere in Mombasa, beach conservation groups are urging the county governments with coastlines to set up garbage bins along the coastlines in a bid to make the beaches free and safe from plastic pollution as the festive season beckons.
Kuna utafiti ule umefanyika, tunaona kwamba kufikia mwaka wa 2050 kutakuwa na taka nyingi baharini kuliko samaki na ni hatari kubwa sana.
In the meantime, the county government of Laikipia, in collaboration with Nyahururu Water and Sanitation Company, has embarked on reclaiming and conserving Ewasonira River that is on the verge of drying following low water levels from the Manguo River.
The distance from the river on both sides should be 30 meters. So anyone who is within 30 meters from the river have encroached on the public land, and it's up to him, either he move out voluntarily or the government will just have him removed.
This as Pan-African Climate Justice Association has urged policymakers to enhance the inclusivity of the youth when developing policies geared towards mitigating climate change.
One of the key gaps that is coming out is that there is no space for research in all of this. We are not consolidating our evidence to make sure that our outcomes and our contribution to the Paris Agreement is actually targeted and addressing the right people, and also factoring in the matter of inclusivity.
Furthermore, Migori County has launched a child advisory committee to help curb the rising incidences of teenage pregnancies, child labor, child negligence, and female genital mutilation.
We've not been able to educate our people, to create awareness, to ensure that they are aware of the rights and regulations.
And lack of political goodwill and inter-county boundary wrangles have been termed as major hindrances towards the registration of community land in northern Kenya.
Viongozi haswa ya kisiasa wakati wanatafuta kura wanaambia ama wanapeana pledges watafanya kazi vizuri, lakini kazi ya muhimu ile wanafanya tunaona ni kufanya jamii kukosana.
Finally, parents in Embu whose boys are due for circumcision this holiday have been urged to avoid taking them to unregulated and unsanitary centers, as the risks associated with contamination may lead to infections that could easily result in death.
Ndio sababu nasema tusipeleke mtoto pale popote pale, hasa wale wanapeleka watoto mahali ule chorochoroni, sababu unajua mtu fulani, unajua anajua kutahiri, unakafikiri yeye anaweza saidia mtoto wako.
John Junge for Prime Edition.
President William Ruto is this Friday expected to lead the graduation ceremony of 167 graduates at the National Defence University of Kenya in Lanet, Nakuru County. The graduation, which is the first of its kind since the public institution received its charter in 2021, will see graduates conferred with certificates, degree and diploma in areas related to defence and security. Here's our reporter Adiziz Hashim with the details.
It's all systems go for the graduation ceremony of the first cohort of the National Defence University Kenya in Lanet, Nakuru County, comprising of 167 graduates. The university will Friday host 1,000 guests, including President William Ruto, who will see graduates conferred with diploma, graduate and postgraduate certificates from various disciplines.
We are very happy that we are graduating tomorrow. We have a total of 167 graduates, some graduating with a master's degree and diplomas. As a university, we are prepared.
These 167 students come from 4 different colleges: the National Defence College, the Joint Command and Staff College, the National Intelligence and Research University College, and the Defence College of Health Sciences.
The National Defence University Kenya, which received its charter in 2021 as a public university, focuses on various training on security. Those graduating are not only from the disciplined forces, but also senior public officials.
For us, it's a very historical moment because the idea to have a national defense university has been there for a long time. But today, that vision has come to its fruition.
For the National Defence University Kenya, our mandate is to secure and ensure that our courses address this issue of national security, strategy, policy making within the security and defence realm.
Major General William Shume, who is the institution's Deputy Vice Chancellor in charge of research, innovation and security studies, said that the graduates had been equipped with the necessary skills to tackle today's as well as emerging issues.
The purpose of establishing this university was to offer training of higher education in defense and security, especially to the KDF fraternity, government ministries that also deal with security issues, and other agencies within the government, and also invite allied countries that we can continue training together as partners in security issues.
Having students coming from different regions around the world allows the discourse of security, strategy, decision making to happen in a broader sense.
This as the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation will bring you a wall-to-wall coverage of this historic graduation ceremony. Abdiaziz Hashim from the National Defense University, Kenya, in Lanet, Nakuru County.
Correction there, she's actually the Deputy Vice Chancellor. Tomorrow is definitely going to be a historic day as they have their graduation. Thank you so much, Abdiaziz, for that story. Now, shocking statistics indicate that at least 3.2 million people die prematurely across the globe as a result of household air pollution. Now listen to this. Closer home, the data shows 23,000 people die annually prematurely due to household air pollution. In a bid to reverse this trend, health stakeholders have scaled up awareness on the need to embrace clean energy. However, this has been hampered by the high cost of safer alternatives. Nancy Okwara with the details of worrying statistics amid calls for investment in affordable clean energy options.
The Household Air Pollution Workshop under the theme Strengthening Partnerships to Eliminate Silent Deaths from Air Pollution closed on Thursday in Nairobi. Statistics show that globally, 2.4 billion people use solid fuels such as charcoal and firewood for cooking and warming living spaces. In Kenya, reliance on solid fuels accounts for 67% of the population. Only 24% rely on liquefied petroleum gas, while 18% rely on paraffin. Over-reliance on solid fuels has had far-reaching health implications, accounting for 6% of diseases in Kenya annually.
With estimates directly linking it to being responsible for 42 deaths per 100,000, making it a top 10 risk factor to health.
The most common diseases include lung cancer, heart disease, stroke, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, among others. Women and children, typically responsible for household chores such as cooking and collecting firewood, bear the greatest health burden.
Household air pollution is a silent killer. It is a real problem. The exposure of women, unfortunately, that vulnerable tranche of the population to those traditional methods of cooking because of the incomplete combustion of solid fuel and kerosene poses a health threat, but also contributes to the degradation of the environment.
Calls have been made for a shift to the use of clean energy with a target to reach 100% by 2028. These include solar, electricity, biogas, liquefied petroleum gas LPG, and natural gas, among others. However, the cost burden has remained a challenge for many families.
We need to do more than just saying this is good for you, it's good for your health. We know, people know that the causes of some of the problems they have health-wise comes from the smoke. Smoking in the smokes from their cooking apparatus. But they are fixated to it because it's the only available means of preparing food or keeping themselves warm.
We are working with the Ministry of Health onto the community health promoters. So we want to measure the pollutants which are in each and every household in which these CHPs are working. The moment we shall be able to get that, we can now be able to inform that this particular region or these particular houses have these particular pollutants. So in that way, we can direct prevention or intervention measures towards that.
We have several groups, women groups across the country, over 15,000 of them. And through the same, we are leveraging on ensuring that the information on clean cooking is actually reaches to the communities and in particular the women who are actually are mostly the ones affected by the air pollution.
Nancy Okwari, Prime Edition.
Kote nchini matumaini, tujitahidi, tujivunie, tuendelee.
Kenya, twende mbele. NCBA, go for it.
Really appreciate it, you guys. I might be tired, but I have to keep working.
Honestly, Nanjia, you're such a workaholic that I don't think you'd enjoy living this kind of life every day.
Is it?
It means it's time for you to get a boyfriend. You're 27 years old. It's about time. Jishing's mother is missing, then I have to go too. I'll help you look for her.
People have depression, but they hide it. They hide it so no one can see it. Not even their close friends or parents.
All I know is if Jingjing were here, she wouldn't like us talking like this.
What about the pain in my heart? What will take that away?
Forgiveness. Mimi nakwambia for the next week utakuwa millionaire.
I'm not the naive type anymore.
Mimi sina mudi ya wageni. Unaona hiyo mudi uko nayo? Hiyo inaitwa morning sickness. Nishazoea kuhangaika hivi tu asubuhi. Jen, tulikuwa tumepanga na yeye. Next week pia tunaweza enda tuone wazazi wangu. Alex, we in a relationship. Na nikao uchukuliangi serious. Jen, huyu baba ya mtoto wako kwani David? Please, enda.
Nilikuwa nafikiria nitafute job. Mimi sitaki kuendelea kukaa idle.
Unafikiri pita nataka Christine mwingine kwa hii nyumba? Si wewe ndio uliharibu boma ya kakako.
Mimi sitaki kusikiza tena, nimechoka.
I made you, don't forget that. Usisahau. Ayaya.
Come back. Kenya Power is calling for the urgent upgrade of power distribution systems, which is aging, posing a major challenge to reliable supply in Kenya. The power retailer's chief executive, Joseph Siror, says the system improvement will help accommodate variations in the energy mix seamlessly. This comes at a time when Kenya Power has teamed up with the Directorate of Criminal Investigations to curb fraud and illegal connections.
It was the fifth countrywide power outage in 3 years, with August this year recording the longest national power loss, which lasted for 20 hours. The power blackouts have been attributed to several factors, among them vandalism and unstable supply system. Statistics from Kenya Power shows that the company recorded a 46% growth in cases of transformer vandalism, affecting 242 transformers compared to 165 units that were vandalized in 2022. In the last 10 years, the government has spent more than 1 trillion shillings to boost and revitalize power transmission in the country. However, this has been less than enough, with the system overload leading to national power trips.
If the plant, for example, is for 40 megawatts, it will be generating 40 megawatts when that sign is very shiny. But at times you find that there is a cloud coming. The moment that cloud comes and it covers it, there is now a shortfall in the grid. When that shortfall hits the grid at an instant by virtue of the cloud that has come, there is going to be the frequency would attempt to drop. And if that dip is not mitigated early enough, you can actually lose the network.
Vandalism of critical power transmission is also becoming a major headache for utility firms.
We have issues of unscrupulous or rather criminals within the country, and there are not that many. But the impact of these few criminals is really adverse in terms of power reliability and quality is concerned.
To encounter the surging trend, Kenya Power has teamed up with the security agencies. The partnership with the Directorate of Criminal Investigations will see more than 40 DCI officers posted to work with Kenya Power personnel to monitor various lines.
We are endowed with a lot of renewable energy resources. There are those in the country we call baseload. This is hydro and geothermal. We have a lot of resources in this space. We should fast track the exploration and the generation from these sources.
The Rural Electrification and Renewable Energy Corporation is banking on increased technical support from the power distributor to bolster the implementation of last-mile connectivity project.
Of course, the biggest challenge has been the issue of budget, because again, we can't reach everybody, so we are doing it in phases. But we want to assure the Kenyans that we shall get to them, because the responsibility of REREC is to electrify every Kenyan across the country.
Kenya Revenue Authority missed collection target in the first 3 months to September 2023 by more than 31 billion shillings. According to the quarterly economic and budgetary review report, the taxman recorded a shortfall in ordinary revenue of 42 billion despite launching an aggressive revenue collection measures and deploying security terms to net tax evaders.
A quarterly economic report by the National Treasury indicates between July and September 2023, total revenue collected, including appropriation in aid, amounted to 629.6 billion shillings, against a target of 661.2 billion shillings, a shortfall of 31.6 billion shillings on account of underperformance of ordinary revenue. In the period under review, the foreign exchange reserves slightly dipped to an equivalent of 4.1 months of import cover compared to 4.4 months of import cover in the same period last year. According to the report, Kenya's current account deficit narrowed to 4.1% of GDP from 5.3% of GDP in September 2022 on account of a shrinking trade deficit. The balance in the merchandise account improved mainly due to a decline in import bill, while export contracted by 2%, mainly due to a decline in horticultural exports, particularly cut flowers. On the other hand, imports declined by 13.2% in the 12 months to September 2023, mainly due to lower imports of infrastructure-related equipment, manufactured goods, oil and chemicals. The total expenditure and net lending inclusive of transfers to county governments for the period ending 30th September 2023 amounted to 804.2 billion shillings against a target of 859.2 billion shillings. The total outstanding national government pending bills for the period amounted to 630.6 billion shillings, despite a policy on clearance of pending bills being in force that directs all state entities to prioritize payment of the pending bills. As of September 2023, Kenya's total public debt increased by 1.8 trillion shillings to 10.7 trillion shillings attributed to external loan disbursements, exchange rate fluctuations, and uptake of domestic debt during the period. Wairi Mujenga for Prime Edition.
Tech players want the government to update current laws and regulations to aid the growth of emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence. DX5 Group Chair Harry Harris says emerging technologies needs to be well defined for adoption using smart technologies as envisioned in Kenya's digital superhighway and creative economy agenda.
As part of a well-defined digital transformation agenda, the government plans to strengthen the ICT industry through investments, partnerships and innovation. Through the ICT blueprint, the government plans to create high-quality jobs that leverage artificial intelligence, robotics and other technologies.
Why did this organization pick this technology? How are they doing with this technology? How much money have they spent on this technology? And what is the outcome after all that?
So far, under the Digital Superhighway Initiative, Kenya has already invested heavily in upskilling the youth while developing digital jobs platforms like the Jitume program. However, IT experts say major strides in developing the sector, Kenya is still grappling with some teething problems.
Cybersecurity becomes very key and every organization needs to be prepared for it. And so very important for us to upskill and to enable people to ensure that everybody is cyber aware.
If an organization is not thinking of technology as fundamental to its success, then that organization is going to fail.
With the advent of things like AI, the question is your job at risk? And the answer is, of course. Then the question then becomes are you going to become a casualty or a beneficiary of AI?
They were speaking at the official announcement of this year's CIO Symposium and Awards to be held on November from the 22nd to the 24th in Diani, Kwale County.
The first section is a 2-day conference where we actually share knowledge, insights, exchange ideas between industry players, so both the demand and the supply side of the tech ecosystem.
The ICT sector accounts for up to 7% of Kenya's GDP. In April 2022, the government launched a 10-year digital master plan in a bid to boost the growth of the industry in Kenya.
Cooperative Bank of Kenya has reported a profit before tax of 24.7 billion shillings for the third quarter of 2023. This represents a 8.6% growth compared to 22.7 billion shillings recorded in the third quarter of 2022.
The profit after tax was equivalent to 18.4 billion shillings compared to 17.1 billion reported in 2022. The bank's total operating income grew by 2.3% from 52.2 billion shillings to 53.4 billion. Net interest income grew from 32.0 billion to 32.8 billion shillings, as the total non-interest income grew by 2.1% to 20.6 billion from 20.2 billion. The operating expenses decreased by 2.1%, while net loans and advances grew to 378.1 billion shillings, a 12.8% growth from 335.2 billion in 2022. Customer deposits slightly increased to 432.8 billion from 432.0 billion shillings. Frederick Muki for Prime Edition.
Now, I asked you a question earlier. On Monday, we had a public holiday for planting trees. Did you plant trees? That's something that we will be talking about in depth with Dr. John Chumo, CEO of Mama Doing Good. And that's under the office of the First Lady. I see a lot of times comments, people asking what projects is the First Lady undertaking. And I would like you to tell us. I've met a gentleman from your office called Reverend Kisotu, and he's educated me a little bit about Mama Doing Good. What is Mama Doing Good all about?
Okay, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here today.
Yes, sir.
And more so to really, discuss what Mama Doing is.
Yes.
Mama Doing Good is all about, and also our matters to do with environmental conservation.
Yes.
But starting with Mama Doing Good, as it were, is an initiative of the First Lady of the Republic of Kenya, Mama Rachel Ruto. I mean, this initiative is actually underpin the pillars that Excellency is committed to do during a term as First Lady of the Republic of Kenya. And one thing that we all know is that Mama Rachel Ruto is not new in areas of development, because she has been able to do that for the last over 15 years ago. And therefore, the initiative of Mama Doing Good is actually structured into three pillars or programs, one being the women economic empowerment. And under women economic empowerment, we are talking about financial inclusion mechanisms that are actually empowering the women of this country. And in so, we are actually talking about having empowered the women for the last 15 years through what you call table banking, where women come on board, pool their resources and have an opportunity to get themselves loaned. And this is an initiative that has seen having a growth, an organic growth of 15,000 groups, over 15,000 groups across 44 counties in this country. And we actually would actually say that through that support, many women, for example, have been able to build, their houses. They've been able to take their children to school. They've been able to do a lot of development across the country. We have a lot of testimonies to that. And actually, that is one of the things that I would actually say is a key pillar. That actually looking at a situation where we are talking about 15,000 women, over 200,000 women, and doing a revolving fund of over 2.5 billion on those tables. So this is actually phenomenal in terms of the work that we're actually doing across the country. And on the same, I would want to say that we are actually looking at a situation that as a country, when you talk about the current empowerment of the women, this is actually also founded on better, or actually what you call the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. Then that's actually the first one. Number two is what you call environment and climate action. And you will agree with me that as a country, it's no longer an issue that we need to discuss climate change as a myth, or something that is actually discussed in low tones. This is a serious thing. And most of the climate change has really affected this country. And for the last 4 or 5 years, we have had a serious drought in this country, which we have never experienced in the last 40 years. And you remember, I'm sure you were even reporting here, the most affected people out of the 5 million Kenyans were the women, children, and people with disability. And therefore, this is a serious thing that Her Excellency feels that we need to address matters to do with climate change. And actually, that is why one of those key pillars is actually climate change issue. And that's why we have what you call environment and climate action. And in this case, you realize that as a country, we are determined, or we are already focused on planting over 15 billion trees in the next 10 years, so that we can actually increase our forest cover from the current 8% to 30% in 10 years. So in the year 2032. And in that case, the Mama Doing Good and Her Excellency, the First Lady, is committed through this program that we can actually plan 500 million trees to contribute to the 15 billion that we're actually talking about. And that's actually one of the things that she's interested and so passionate about it, to ensure that if we do well in terms of adaptation and mitigation of our climate change, then we shall have actually contributed to food security in this country. And obviously, supporting the women economic empowerment, because most of the livelihoods that we are talking about is about issues of dairy keeping, issues of horticulture, and all this. And this is actually rotates around matters to do with weather and climate change. And therefore, that is actually number 2. Number 3 is actually what we are referring as fair diplomacy. And I'm happy that you are saying that you have had a discussion with my friend Reverend Kisotu. And fair diplomacy has 3 programs that actually discusses mostly on matters to do with issues to do with we understand that as a country, as a nation, the basic foundation of a nation is actually a family.
Yes.
And by the way, the families are under serious threat in terms of very many issues. One, we are seeing a lot of divorce. We are seeing a lot of drug abuse. We are seeing a lot of pornography, for example, and many other things that we are seeing. And therefore, we need to go back and ask ourselves, when and where did we have rain beating us? And that's actually we are saying, if we can actually go back to schools, we go back to our churches, we go back to our communities, and actually say that let's build our families. And that's one of the things that we actually, through what we call faith diplomacy, we go around the country, we go to churches, we go to families, and actually try to bring them together. And also the other thing that we are also talking about is the issue of the youth. We can, one thing is that less than 35, I mean, between, we won't say zero, between 0 to 35 years is actually the youth we are talking about. And that's a very serious constituent. And therefore, we need to start discussing about their empowerment. We need to discuss about what they need to do to undergo serious value chains in anything that we do. And that's one of the things that we actually look at. And we have programs for the youth that we also do together across the country. And also trying to do...
And I know there are other departments,
I've talked about
that you have just even under them. And it seems like your office is quite busy. But I want us to talk about just the climate action. The environment and climate action.
Oh, for today. Next time I will be able to
Next time I will. That means you can come back again. But when it comes to that, National Tree Planting Day was on Monday. Would you say it was a hit or a miss?
I want to tell you that, as I said earlier on, that as a country, it was long overdue. We really needed to have actually started doing this kind of a thing even earlier on. And therefore, I would actually say the reason why we did the country, or rather the government, or rather through the assessment of that holiday, came in because we have a focus. We have a target of planting 15 billion trees in the next 10 years. And one of the things that we needed to do is to show the commitment, is to show that we are actually having this thing as a serious issue. As according to the president, this is a serious agenda as per the manifesto of the Kenya Kwanza government. And therefore, when that thing was gazetted, we were actually saying this is actually an opportunity that we are calling upon all the Kenyans. By the way, it was a working holiday. It was the issue is let's go back to wherever you are. Let's leave our offices.
And from the response of Kenyans,
it was fantastic.
So
I think it was a hit. And I think the target that we were talking about was about 150 million. And from the look of things, and from the preliminary reports that seems to be coming, we are actually thinking that it was a real hit, and therefore.
So would you say the 15 billion target will be achieved by 2032?
If we maintain the tempo, if we maintain this kind of a spirit, like for example, this was a what do you call a launch, and therefore with the El Nino rains that we are actually seeing, we can actually take the advantage. We can leverage on this, and if we do that by the end of, for example, even by the end of the year, we would have actually gone even around 500 million, which means if we do that every year, then I want to tell you that by the end of 10 years, we shall have actually 15 billion, and we shall have actually gone 30% of what we are actually aiming at in terms of the forest cover.
Yes. You've talked about Mama Doing Good and how you cover various sectors from table banking, which is the economy, and other social issues. And therefore you have an experience to understand why tree planting is so important for our nation. I will let you answer that question when we come back from the break.
Cheza Loto Moto
with
gone ahead tukamaliza pia school fees ya your other kid.
Thank you God. Asante sana Loto Moto.
Cheza Loto Moto. Shinda pesa moto moto.
Kote nchini matumaini, tujitahidi, tujivunie, tuendelee.
Tunapowasha vifaa vyetu, tunapata fursa ya kutangamana na wasikilizaji wetu.
Karibu sana thĩinĩ wa tabarĩra ya Rwiga.
Tunapeperusha utangazaji uliobobea katika habari,
nĩ ũndũ wa macio na mangĩ maingĩ,
burudani,
nĩ harĩa tũkoragwo tũkĩigua nyĩmbo mwaki nyĩmbo hot,
na hamasisho la kiroho. Usiachwe nyuma. Jiunge nasi kwa safari ya kufana katika 99.5 FM. Soro FM.
Ile tanki moja ndiye anaweka sikio ya simu na narudi anaosha, anaweka maji hapo.
Anaweka tena maji hapo.
Na kwa nini unalala?
Nifanye huko ndani tusiamku polisi.
Sasa unatupotezea wakati.
Mlipata hiyo maji ndio ilifanya mkao wa kwanza.
Hiyo maji ndio ilileta shida.
Kwa nini walikupali watu wakunywe uso ya watu?
Human faces ni choo, waste.
Oh, ni kisungu mmebadilisha sasa.
Mmebadilisha wapi?
Nashikilia uchumi ya Kenya, 75% of the GDP of the country anategemea mimi. Ukimwangalia na katu kama exhaust anyway. Zura ukimwangalia watu matusi.
Nimenyamaza, siongei.
Hutaki kujitetea.
Sitaki.
Welcome back. Now, before I was talking to Dr. John Chumo, the CEO of Mama Doing Good and the Office of the First Lady. And as you talked about the various departments that you have in Mama Doing Good, I could see that it cuts across economic issues, social issues. Why is then tree planting important for a nation? And how does it affect all the various, say, economic and social issues?
So thank you so much. One thing that we realize is that when you talk about conservation and we are talking about tree planting, and we say tree planting is actually one of the ways of mitigating climate change. We know in this country one of the key important economic activities that we do is actually agriculture. And therefore the matters to do with food security and all this. And I know for sure that once we do very well in terms of increasing our forest cover, we actually mitigate climate change and therefore bring an enabling environment that can be able to do for us as the women we are talking about, the youth we are talking about, the farmers we are talking about, will be able to do serious farming that would, one, keep their food, give this country enough food security, and also, economically, individually and collectively, they become very, they benefit out of it. And therefore, the women we are talking about, the 200,000, for example, and when we are talking about a woman, that means we are talking about several households in terms of the number of people that are actually affected.
Impacted
by that. We are talking about over 3 million, for example. And then in this case, the tree planting will obviously affect them will just improve the economy while when the environment is actually well enhanced. And therefore, for us, as Mama Doing Good, we understand the importance of tree planting. And one thing again is that we are bringing on board also the youth. And I talked about over 60% of our population being the youth. And these are the people who when we talk about tree planting, it's a whole value chain. We need them to actually start growing them. And by the way, we are no longer talking about tree planting. We talk about tree growing because it's just it's not one event. It is just a progress in terms of doing all this and taking care of the trees. And therefore, starting from the time when you just do the tree nurseries, who are actually supposed to do that? They're actually supposed to be the women groups we are talking about. We are also talking about the youth. And once they do the nurseries, the same nurseries, the seedlings we are talking. When you talk about 15 billion trees, I mean that is a lot. And we are not going to import the seedlings from Uganda or Tanzania or Ethiopia. We are actually talking about our youth and the women participating in actually tree planting, and we are going to buy. These trees are going to be bought from them by government through, for example, Kenya Forest Service, through the CDF, through the county governments, through NGOs and all that. So this is going to really impact them positively in terms of their economic wise. And that's why we are actually saying, as Mama Doing Good, that this is an opportunity for the youth and for the women.
Yes, and Dr. Chumo, I hear you, and I can hear the advantages of tree planting. But a youth listening to you right now is wondering, I need a job. What are the job opportunities for them that will actually entice them to actually want to take part?
Now, I want first of all to remove this idea that a job is a white collar job and all that. Let us actually demystify this very bad attitude, because we are talking about, I've talked about 15 billion trees. We need a lot of nurseries, for example. We need them to start employing. If you look at, for example, how much one tree costs in terms of the amount of money that it costs. If you look at, for example, maybe one seedling, it can go, for example, 50 shillings. It can go, for example, that's a start from 10 shillings all the way to around 100 shillings. Assuming, for example, you do 10,000, for example, trees, how many can you multiply, for example, 40 shillings or 30 shillings? Is a lot of money. What we are actually saying is that there is an opportunity for our youth to actually do business when it comes to this. If you look at what the many who have actually gone to that level, ensuring that it's a whole value chain. There are those who are going to work to make sure that the walls are actually prepared. There are those ones who are actually doing the business of transporting. There are all this. This is actually what we are referring as green jobs. They are actually a lot, and therefore one of the things that we need to demystify is that we, other than the the research, the people who are going foresters and all this, we also need a good number of the youth doing this kind of work, because we really need people to go back and do a lot of nurseries. A lot of research has been done, and we know that's where the money is.
Yes. And other than tree planting, what other activities is the Office of the First Lady undertaking to ensure conservation?
No, one of the things that we are actually talking about is what you call we are actually talking about the issue of clean cooking. And we are actually saying that at the moment, about 80% of our people, especially the women of this country, are actually cooking through cooking through using biomass and charcoal. And therefore, we really need now to start, removing, transiting from actually use of the biomass to clean cooking. And that's why we want to now talk about the clean technologies. And we are actually talking about the modern stoves and LPG and all that. This is actually one of the things that we are actually doing a lot of advocacy. We have a lot of work in that area. The other thing is about the issue of converting waste, for example, what you call circular economy. We are actually encouraging our youth, our women, to ensure that they can actually, we have an opportunity. We have a lot of waste being produced in our hotels, in our houses, organic waste that can be converted to fertilizer, they can actually be converted to food for other things.
Yes.
And by the way, there's something called Black Soldier Fly, for example,
Yes.
that I know it has already been. It's a new thing that is actually being done and being used by to convert organic waste to manure.
Yes.
And that's actually one of the things that we're already training our women. We are training women across the country so that they can actually, leverage on the waste that we have and convert waste to, fertilizers and manure. And that's actually what we are actually saying as office or as Mama Doing Good, that this is just something that we can be able to see other than tree planting. We also talk about the issue of clean cooking.
Yes.
We also talk about circular economy. And these are the activities that we are actually exposing our women to do.
Yes.
And it's phenomenal. It's actually being seen. We have actually seen most of the groups now addressing that. And we are actually calling upon also the youth to actually follow the suit. And this, the work that we are doing as Mama Doing Good, it is cutting across.
Yes.
And today, I want to tell you that we are now having many business coming up where we have groups also, we have a lot of waste, like for example, a lot of plastics that we're talking about. We have groups now, especially in most of the towns, like here in Nairobi, Korogoja, and many others, who are already, collecting waste and converting those waste to be recycled.
So there are business opportunities.
There are
right
a lot
there.
of business opportunities.
Yes, I think that is what people want to hear, is that even as we are planting trees or we are even talking about conservation, that they will also benefit in other ways. Because people are saying things are tough. We also need to find a way to put food on our table. Yes. Dr. John Chumo, thank you so much for joining us today. Unfortunately, my director tells me we have run out of time. I can tell you're so passionate about this conversation.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time. We'll definitely have you in studio again.
Thank you so much.
Moving on now to other business stories where the government will upscale capacity building programs and introduce cutting-edge technologies targeting small-scale farmers. Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization Crops Director Dr. Lusike Wasilwa says the move will help in promoting sustainable farming techniques and leverage technology to enhance productivity.
A move towards sustainable and inclusive agricultural development, the government has joined forces with Plantwise Plus to offer solutions to small-scale farmers in pest control and productivity enhancement. The Kenya Agricultural Research and Livestock Organization KALRO Crops Director Dr. Lusike Wasilwa says farmers from 35 counties have already been empowered to reduce the risks of pesticides in the food value chain. Under the program, KALRO will implement innovative strategies that address key challenges in the agricultural sector, which include improving access to resources for small-scale farmers, promoting sustainable farming techniques, and leveraging technology to enhance productivity.
We look at things like biological control. And in biological control, we use what you call parasitoids to manage pest solutions. For example, papaya mealybug right now, we have identified parasitoids, and we are working in collaboration with our center in Pakistan and our center in Ghana.
Wasilwa says a government will enhance capacity building programs for farmers, introduce cutting-edge technologies, and establish support systems for farmers to ensure fair market access.
We can reach even more and explain to people that it should not affect crop losses for pests and diseases. There's something we can do about them. So do more capacity building on crop health at the ground level, and this will be done by the plant doctors because they're already there. We don't have to take them there, they're already in the community. And then we're also trying to target, because many of our plant doctors have retired, to target retired agriculture extension workers or even researchers, even university.
It is expected that once implemented, the concept will boost agricultural output and also contribute to poverty reduction and improved livelihoods for rural communities. Frederick Moki for Prime Edition.
Treasury is collecting more than 16 billion shillings every month as housing levy at the government moves to roll out mass housing projects. Housing Principal Secretary Charles Hinga says the funds are ring-fenced to guarantee the rollout of affordable housing projects in all the 47 counties.
The housing levy came into force from the 1st of July after months of contests from employers and employees. The fund, which was initially a tax, is levied on all employees as a contribution towards the state mass housing projects. So far, 11 housing projects have been launched to help meet the housing demand in Kenya, which is estimated to be more than 250,000 units annually. Housing Principal Secretary Charles Hinga says the government has launched housing projects in Kiambu, Nairobi, Kakamega, Homa Bay, Mombasa, and Kirinyaga counties.
In this affordable housing program, you will not walk for more than 5 minutes before you find a school. You will not walk for more than 5 minutes before you find a health facility. We are building markets. We are dealing with it from a human settlement perspective. And we are also anchoring it on the key economic activities.
National Treasury says an estimated 16.4 billion shillings is collected every month. The fund is ring-fenced to enable investors construct the units on behalf of Kenyans.
This is an investment in ourselves. It's an investment in our country. Because, as I said, we have a broken system that we need to fix.
Hinga notes the ongoing projects have created thousands of jobs for both informal and formal sectors.
200,000 homes will require 18 million bags of cement. The jobs are not only in the cement factory. Where does the job start? The creation of jobs happens when you have a deliberate plan.
Speaking during the ongoing 30th IEK International Convention in Mombasa, Hinga challenged engineers to seize available opportunities in the multi-billion project.
There is no reason why we should have foreign engineers and foreign architects coming here to take up a job that can be done by our people. So there is a legal instrument that we are working on with your chapters so that we entrench that. So this thing becomes yours by right.
Juni Karisambele from Mombasa County.
Cheza Loto Moto.
School fees ya msichana imemalizwa.
Loto Moto. May the Almighty God bless you. Keep on doing the right thing.
Cheza Loto Moto. Shinda pesa moto.
Welcome back. Now, privatization of state-owned entities has always been a hot potato issue in Kenya due to deep-rooted political interests. In 2005, Kenya enacted the Privatization Act to guide and fast-track the sale of public entities. However, the process has been slow and contentious. Alan Oko engages with the Chief Executive Officer of the Privatization Authority on the privatization plan and the newly enacted Privatization Act 2023.
Hello and welcome to this special interview. My name is Alan Aoko. Today we want to talk about a very interesting topic. We are going to talk about the privatization bill as well as all connected purposes surrounding this particular bill. President William Ruto signed the privatization bill in October after being passed by the National Assembly in September. The bill, which was sponsored by Majority Leader Mr. Kimani Ichung'wah, entails a revised regulatory framework for the privatization of public entities, among which aims to rather improve the efficiency and competitiveness of Kenya's productive resources. Joining us on set today just to deliberate on this issue and everything else is Mr. Joseph Koskei, who is the CEO of the Privatization Authority. Karibu sana.
Asante, nashukuru.
Yes, Kenyans are very curious. You find, even as you go to the field, we talk to these Kenyans, they want to understand more about the implication of this bill and your role as an entity in this sector. What should we know that is critical for us in this bill?
Thank you very much for that question. It's really very important for Kenyans to get to know what we do as a privatization authority, and particularly what is the contribution, of course, of this particular authority in terms of the Kenyan economy. We are a government agency that is involved and established under Section 8 of the Privatization Act 2023. And our main responsibility really is to implement what is called a privatization program. And I think it is very important, perhaps, for Kenyans to understand when we talk about privatization program, what is it? A privatization program is a list of companies or public entities that have been identified by government for privatization. And therefore, our responsibility is to implement that particular privatization program. And number two, we have also the responsibility of advising government on all aspects of privatization of public entities. So that is the role that we do play. And this is where we do the midwifing of the process of transfer of ownership of commercial activities which are carried out by public entities into the private sector, which is really where they are supposed to be. So that then government remains with the role of providing a regulatory environment of managing, how commercial activities are undertaken.
That's very interesting, because from where you sit, perhaps, could you enlighten us on what was the issue or what was the gap that needed to be filled in terms of legislation to bring this privatization bill? As I'm sure you are the stakeholder, the main stakeholder there. What led to the outcome of this bill from where you sit?
Thank you very much. Very important to note something, that the Privatization Act 2005, which was repealed by the Privatization Act 2023, came into being in 2005. And at that particular time, we didn't have the current, Kenyan constitution. And the new constitution came up, with a lot of things that were not covered. So it needed first and foremost to ensure that our act and our operations are in compliance with the 2010 constitution. Some of the new things that have come in this new act, which were not there before, is that our mandate then was wider, but at the same time, as a conflict to some extent. We were involved in what you call formulation, management, and implementation of this privatization program. What that meant is that we were involved in identifying what to privatize, whether we can have an entity removed from the list for privatization, and then we also do the implementation. In other words, we were involved in doing policy and implementation at the same time, which is not best practice from a governance perspective. Now, this new law has come up with very clear provisions that issues policy is done by another body, which in this case is the parent ministry, the National Treasury, Parliament involved, even public participation, which is a requirement of the current 2010 constitution. And now our responsibility is implementation of what has been identified. And maybe just to give maybe the viewers a snapshot of what it is. In this current law, the determination of what to privatize is given to the Kenyan. There is section 20 of the act that says, in identifying what to privatize, there are some people who must be consulted, and more importantly, the public. And that responsibility is now being undertaken by the Cabinet Secretary, the National Treasury. And therefore, this act, as it were, is separating roles and giving, the parties that are critical in terms of identification of what to privatize, the opportunity to do that particular role. In the 2005 law, the provision of Parliament was more at an operational level. But in this particular instance, Parliament comes in very strongly in terms of the ratification of what to privatize. And as you know, Parliament plays various roles. It plays the oversight role as well as representing, people mashinani. And therefore, their voice in terms of what needs to be privatized is very important, and that has been clearly spelled out in this particular law. So that separation is now very clear, and we are playing according to the provisions of the Constitution.
Okay, so what you're saying is that that Parliament was excluded and the Treasury put in is a bit of a misconception.
If we can be very specific, if you look at, for example, Section 19 of this Act, it is good to be very clear and specific on what it is.
Yeah.
This Section 19 talks about the establishment of this, what you call a privatization program, which is done by the Cabinet Secretary being the policy maker within that particular ministry, and it is approved by the Cabinet. Okay? Now, once that has happened, it has to be subjected to public participation. So Kenyans have an input in terms of what needs to be privatized. So they give their views. And there are reasons, and there's a very clear mechanism of identifying what to put in a privatization program. So this law, again, has put that one very, very clearly, and it's captured in Section 21 of this particular Act. So there are certain specific things that what does the Cabinet Secretary look at when identifying what to include in the program. And when you subject that to public participation, you're also giving reasons why. And even Kenyans themselves, by reading Section 21, which identifies, for example, is this particular entity that we want to privatize, how strategic is it to the country? If it is, for example, a public entity that has issues to do with security of the country, it cannot be touched. Yeah? If, for example, we are talking about an industry or a sector where private sector can do very well, there's no reason why government, for example, may need to continue. You want to look at aspects to do with, by privatizing this particular public entity, is it going to create a monopoly? If the answer is yes, even Kenyans are given that opportunity to be able to say, no, this one cannot be privatized because it can create a monopoly and there are certain consequences. And then after all this has happened, then this one goes to Parliament for ratification. So Parliament is given up to 60 days to look at what has been proposed and approved by Cabinet for privatization. There will be reasons advanced as to why that particular public entity has been identified as a candidate for privatization, and they have 60 days to either ratify or refuse to ratify. It can be the entire list, it can be part of the list, and once Parliament has given the note, more importantly, again, it will be published in the Kenya Gazette. So every Kenyan will be able to know what has been identified for privatization. And then after that, we come in as the privatization authority to implement.
That's very interesting. You spoke about the issue of the criteria, what is looked at in these entities, whether it is probably strategically placed, if it's a security issue. We've seen perhaps in, for example, other jurisdictions like South Africa, for example, we've seen their rail completely somewhat commercialized. You find several players in the rail sector. What will it be like, for example, looking at, for example, Kenya Railways? It's wholly owned by the government. Are we going to see a situation where even the rail sector, which might also be very strategic and an issue of security, also allowed to bring in other players to offer transport solutions and services to the people?
Thank you very much for that particular question. Again, as we said, looking at the process of identification, if Kenyans in their wisdom, because you said any that is identified and is subjected to public participation, and Kenyans in their wisdom decide and say, we are now ready to have this one be carried out by the private sector. At that particular moment, it is actually the will of the people that will be implemented.
Also, they can override.
And for us, as the privatization authority, our responsibility is to implement what Kenyans have said. You go ahead and privatize this one on our behalf. So we are their agent, as it were. So it is really Kenyans through the public participation process who determine and say, we are now ready to have this one. We can't go outside that provision where Kenyans actually play a very important role. And this is where this particular act really comes out very strongly, because the Kenyan people are given the opportunity to decide. And there are reasons that are advanced. Look at this particular criteria. Do you think we still need to continue as government running this particular commercial activity? And they will say, we don't think it's necessary now. Or we think probably we can still give some time. So that day they make that decision. Ours is to implement what they have given us to implement.
I'm very curious. Is the reverse true? Is it possible? Have you seen anywhere that a president such as the one where you find an entity has gone private, and then perhaps due to one reason or the other, the people say, perhaps we need our very own government-owned entity. We need it reverted back. Is that possible?
Again, as I said, Kenyans or the public have every right in terms to determine destiny. So if for one reason or another, they think that probably we need this in this particular way, and there are good and justifiable reasons why they want, it's really their decision. And there is normally a process, how that can be done. Ours as the privatization authority is really to implement privatizations of that which Kenyans have said, go ahead and privatize this one on our behalf. And there are benefits that arise from any privatization that is undertaken. So when that comes, again, as it were, there is a process which ideally is outside the confines of the Privatization Act 2023.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as the Privatization Authority, from where you sit, what are some of those best practices you've seen? Kenya is known to be a leader in the region. What best practices have we adopted in this process of implementation?
Maybe you can rephrase the question.
Or perhaps I can say it this way. The privatization of these entities, are there any examples we can draw from that have worked in regions beyond ours, that we can say this one has worked this way and perhaps we need to borrow a leaf from them and implement as they have? Even as we look at the public, they're the ones who say who to privatize or not, but from the Privatization Authority side, what lessons can we draw from the region and beyond?
I think what is very important for us to appreciate is that when it comes to a privatization process, largely in many jurisdictions, the process is almost the same. And therefore, what really matters is how do you implement that particular process. And maybe for the benefit of viewers, maybe just to give us, just a snapshot of what the process entails. Like, for example, once we have this list we call a privatization program, approved and published and given to us for implementation, the first and immediate process that you do is you carry out what is called a due diligence process or assessment to look at the financial health of that particular institution. It is just like, for example, when you go and see a doctor and you go there is a process of examination. What is it? I have temperature. So what could it be leading to? So at the end of the day, you get a prescription. Mm-hmm. So equally in a privatization process, you have to go look at the financial status of that particular institution, look at the legal due diligence. You're looking at, does this particular public entity have any litigation that is ongoing that may affect the process? If it's a manufacturing entity, for example, you want to look at what is the status in terms of the plant that is there. Is it modern? Is it outdated? That kind of a thing. What assets does this particular entity own? So you have to do an asset valuation. Now, after you've done all this, you come up with something we call a proposal. Now, this proposal summarizes when this particular entity, for example, was created. What was the purpose? Has it achieved its purpose? Is there a need for it to continue serving that? Or particularly the sector where this entity is already enough role played by the private sector. So should we? Now, what is the method of privatization that is recommended? After you've done all that, it is the due diligence that guides you in terms of the method of privatization. And again, if you look at the Act, it's very clear in terms of stipulations what are the methods of privatization that have been prescribed. So even when you go to these other jurisdictions, it is more or less the same particular process. If there must be any involvement of the public in terms of giving their views, it is very important because then you need to carry everybody along. And more importantly, because you're dealing with public assets, there are three critical things that one needs to look at. The process must be very transparent. And people must be able to say, yes, we can see transparency. we must be accountable in terms of what we do. And at the end of it all, there must be value for the public resources. And that is why part of this particular process is what we call a business valuation. It's that business valuation that will now guide what would be the sale price of this particular entity in terms of a share price. So if you look at other jurisdictions, it is more or less the same process. And therefore, we are actually at a very, very better place as an institution in terms of what we do. And even the things that we do, we also borrow from other areas. There are, of course, maybe challenges that they face. What are the key lessons that you can learn from, which we can be able to avoid when we are carrying out the process. So there is that particular aspect where you can do some bit of benchmarking and have certain key lessons that can be applied in a country like ours.
Yeah, that's interesting. We do understand you have in your entry about 25 entities. Perhaps maybe you can take us through the status of these entities.
I want to take you to Section 68 of Privatization Act 2023, which says that the list that was provided in 2009, we call the privatization program, with the coming into effect of this particular act, actually lapsed. And therefore, as we speak today, we don't have what is called a privatization program. We are waiting for that one to be developed, and then we implement. However, there are certain activities that were initiated for certain, entities or companies which are ongoing. And I want to say most of these are largely within the hospitality sector, and so we have a few hotels that are in the process of privatization.
Are you in liberty to tell us some of these hotels? Maybe Kenyans are very familiar with them and are curious. Maybe they want to buy, you never know.
It's in public domain, but I think what is very important also for us to appreciate is that I think sometimes when we identify particular entities, we make certain assumptions that maybe government or government agencies own some of these hotels 100%. But you may find that we have instances where in some of them we have, say, 40% shareholding, and the 60% shareholding is owned by private parties. In some instances, maybe we own up to around 33%, and then in some instances, maybe we own more than 50%. So I'm sure Kenyans have been seeing the list of the hotels that we have that are owned by government. I think it's common knowledge.
Okay. Perhaps we shift gears a bit and maybe talk about simply what is the role of collaboration in this entire process? What is the role of collaboration, especially from stakeholders within this space?
This is something I really want to stress. Much as privatization as a process is a technical process, but the most important thing, and this is part of the experience that we've learned as we moved forward, is that it is largely stakeholder driven. And therefore, you cannot carry out a privatization process without involving key stakeholders. And part of those key stakeholders is starting with you as KBC. Because then when you give us this opportunity to do sensitization, then we educate Kenyans to be able to understand what is privatization, why is privatization being done, how is it beneficial, to the country, how is it going to affect us. Because, for example, if you have an institution that is supposed to be generating money and paying government dividend and taxes, but on the contrary, it is actually asking for money from government, that money would have been utilized for other purposes. And therefore, this is where issues of benefits of privatization come in. So it is very important. So key stakeholders like yourself help us in terms of sensitization. When we go to a place where an entity is domiciled, that entity in itself affects the lives of many people. And therefore, it is important for the people around that area to understand what is in it for us. When privatization happens, is it going to affect us? In which way? So you get that particular point. So they must have the buy-in. Okay? Very important. There are other players within government agency, depending again on the method of privatization. If, for example, the method entails an IPO, Capital Market Authority comes in, very important, you can't ignore that. The Nairobi Securities Exchange comes in, very important. So there are very many players and you can't ignore them in that particular process. And you need to make sure that you engage everybody. In the approval process, there is cabinet, there is the National Assembly, there is the public. So all this is really very critical in ensuring that this particular. So collaboration is very key. You can't actually succeed in any privatization without engagement and buy-in from your key stakeholders.
Indeed, you've talked about critical mass of people understanding and knowing what you do. Perhaps as we close, what will be your clarion call to Kenyans as they watch you right now?
Very important. I think what really we need to tell our viewers and Kenyans is that privatization is a very good thing. And it may not be the panacea of everything, but the thing is, it is very important that government is allowed to provide public services. And where we have public entities that were created for certain purposes, and those purposes have been realized, and there is a vibrant private sector, it's not necessary for government to continue carrying out commercial activities. However, as we said, again, it depends on the strategic nature of that particular public entity. So that then once Kenyans have said, I think this particular one, we can let go and allow the private sector, then let us support that particular process so that then we can get value for that particular asset. Otherwise, it would be very sad where you have a commercial entity that is expected to be giving government revenue in terms of taxes and paying dividends, lining also, among others, asking for financial support from government. And that way, this is where then you find there's a drain on resources, which then would have been used for, economic development of the country, in supporting, many programs like for example, if you look at the BETTER program, there are many things around housing, there are many things around health, there are many education, so medicals. So it's really important, that this, whatever resources are, limited resources that we have, are actually channeled to more productive areas, which can actually help in terms of the provision of really essential public services.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. Although we are short of time, we do hope our viewers have understood their role in the privatization process when it comes to all the entities we have in the country and the impact that it has therein. My name has been Alan Aoko. Thank you so much for watching. We have been speaking to Joseph Koskei, who is the CEO of the Privatization Authority. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, Alan, for that interview. He was talking about the privatization bill and what that means for even your businesses and even state-owned entities. And that is always a hot topic that sometimes people don't want to talk about, but the government has been very keen when it comes to privatization of state-owned entities. And a lot of times it is a hot issue because there is a lot of interest, even as you had from that interview with people with various interests wanting to participate. And sometimes there is even lack of trust on how the sale will be done or the transaction. So that was an in-depth interview right there. We're going to have sports coming up, and in sports I know a lot of you have been asking what are the results between Harambee Stars and also Gabon. Okumu is coming up shortly. I can see him in the sports studio with the results of that game. And remember, we will definitely be covering for you other games. Okumu, tell us a little bit about the game between Harambee Stars and Gabon.
Yes, indeed, you're right. Thank you so much for joining us on Sports at this hour. I'm Bernard Okumu. And indeed, Harambee Stars did begin their quest to qualify for the 2026 World Cup with a 2-1 loss against host Gabon in Franceville during the Group F game played this evening. And now Harambee Stars did score first through Masoud Juma in the 40th minute, but the host came back in the second half through Denise Bwanga and Gaila Kanga to score the 2 goals and give their side the lead. Following the 3 loss. Harambee Stars is now at the bottom of Group F, while which the group is being jointly led by the Burundi. Burundi did beat Gambia 3-2 in the opening match, and also Gambia, of course, Gabon moving to the second position after that 2-1 win against Kenya. Remember the other teams in that particular group, which is Group F, Cote d'Ivoire and Seychelles, they'll play tomorrow. The next match for Harambee Stars is on 20th of this month, which will be played in Ivory Coast, Abidjan, against Seychelles. And of course, KBC Channel 1 does sincerely apologize for not being able to broadcast that particular match due to technical hitches. And on to other news now, where Ruaraka Best Team Headquarters Subunit qualified for the semi-finals of the GSU Commandant Football Tournament after beating Victor Company 2-1 in a quarter-final match played at the Embakasi B campus here in Nairobi. In another match, Reiki Subunit thrashed Alpha Company by 3-1. The semi-finals will be played tomorrow at the GSU headquarters in Ruaraka.
Derek Mwenda scored the first goal for headquarters in the 25th minute, then netted the second goal in the 35th minute. Despite their dominant display, headquarters was unable to maintain a clean sheet as Richard Opio scored an own goal in the dying minute of the second half, forcing the match to end 2-1.
Tumejiandaa vizuri juu mafans wa kwetu wanatungojea kule, wanatungoja tuende tumalizie huko. So tumejaribu hapa, tumeitoa hapa, tunataka kuipeleka huko na niko sure tuta make a big difference.
Tumekuwa tukitrain.
Next.
Tumetrain very hard na what is going on, tumeshinda game zetu 3. Si kwa sababu ya kubahatisha. We have been doing good in training. So we are okay for anything.
Meanwhile, the Rec Subunit thrashed Alpha Company 3-1. Hilary Njenga scored a brace in the 20th and 30th minute of the match before Bernard Mutungi scored the third goal that sent the team to the semis.
Kwamba tulianza first half tukienda tumeanza mzuri, lakini tukafika mahali tukasambaratia kidogo, lakini wakati tuliorganize second half imetusaidia ambayo tumeweza kupata mabao mawili ambaye na tulikuwa tumeona mistakes kidogo, tulirekebisha wakati ya mapumziko na ndio tumeweza kufanya hiyo angalau results zimeanza, tumepata hizo mabao mawili, ingawa tumekosa zingine, lakini tunashukuru tumemaliza game.
Naweza tolewa quarters pia. So whichever team yenye tutakutana nayo huko mbele, tunajitayarisha kucheza kila team na kila game na seriousness yenye inafaa. So irrespective kama wako last day kwenye pool yao ama wako first, tuna treat game by game. So tukikutana nao tutamenyana vile vile tunajua.
In another match, Embakasi B qualified for the semis after defeating Golf Company 3-2 in a penalty shootout, while Quebec Company entered the semis after beating November 7-6 in post-match penalties. Tomorrow headquarters will battle. Tomorrow headquarters.
And the French 13 and 5-a-side rugby national teams are scheduled to play 2 test matches against Kenyan sides next month in Nairobi. According to France Deputy Ambassador Lionel Fabre, the French teams are expected to jet into the country before the end of this month for the games. Now, the test matches will take place on the 2nd and 5th of December at the Showgrounds and Impala Grounds, respectively. He says that the matches will act as a sports partnership between the two nations.
The French national team coming to Kenya has been a conversation that has been ongoing for about 5 years now. Of course, the pandemic closed everything, so it stopped for a while, then it resumed again. And they're also excited. It will be the first time ever that our France national team is coming in Kenya here for a test match.
Hope we'll have a lot of fans. We'll have fans from the embassies. The ambassador will attend and will be a strong supporter of our team. And we'll also have the pleasure after the match to have what we call in rugby in French, la troisième mi-temps. So we'll have a social gathering and we'll make sure whoever wins will have a very nice after game all together in a true spirit of friendship as we need to celebrate. So that it's very important for the Kenyan team to have this possibility to play against France because it will help them qualify for playing international tournaments.
And former world record holder Eliud Kipchoge is set to be conferred an honorary degree by the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, JKUAT, in its forthcoming graduation ceremony. Now, the Olympic marathon champion, who was at the institution today on a tree planting visit, emphasized the need to embrace sports as a way of uniting the nation. JKUAT is dedicating the prestigious Doctor of Humane Letters honoris causa to Kipchoge for his exceptional humanitarian efforts and philanthropic endeavors. Now, the decision was unanimously endorsed by the Honorary Degrees Committee, University Senate and Council, recognizing Kipchoge's unparalleled achievements and contributions to the society. The official conferment ceremony is set to take place during the 41st JKUAT graduation ceremony on 1st of next month at the Juja main campus.
It's an honor to what I've been doing behind the scenes. It's an honor, it's a real award that been awarded for what I am actually doing to the human family. Especially for us giving motivation, giving hope to the general public. And hope is what makes us to prosper, wake up and work every day.
And the national women's under-20 team is optimistic of registering a good result against Cameroon when the two sides clash tomorrow in the second leg of the Women's Under-20 World Cup qualifier at Nyayo Stadium. Now, the Kenyan team, or Rising Stars, lost 3-0 in the first leg encounter played in Nyayo on Saturday and need to win tomorrow's match by more than 4 goals to progress to the next stage of the qualifiers. The team, coached by Beldino Demba, finalized their training today at the Nyayo National Stadium, ready for the crucial game. The team will still miss the services of key players who are still sitting for their KCSE exams.
We are working well and doing our best to get the best results we can get tomorrow.
Kujipanga, tumejipanga, zoezi imekuwa poa hadi sasa tunamalizia. Kesho tunajua tutapiga hiyo mabao 4 tutapata. Fans tunaomba wajitokeze wakuja tupe hiyo support, at least tutakuwa na moral tukiona wamejitokeza, wajitokeze kwa wingi.
Now, remember that the winner of that particular third round match will clash with either Democratic Republic of Congo or Egypt in the fourth and final round of the Under-20 World Cup qualifiers. Moving on to rugby, where Kenya Rugby Union has unveiled teams that will represent Kenya this year's Safari Sevens Rugby Tournament, which gets underway tomorrow at the RFA grounds here in Nairobi. Defending champions Shujaa and Moran will compete in the men's competition, while Lionesses and Cubs will fly the Kenyan flag in the women's competition.
Vincent Onyala and Tony Omondi will co-captain the Shujaa side, which features Herman Humwa, John Okoth and Samuel Asati, among others. Elvis Olukusi and Crescent Ojwang co-captain the Morans, who will feature Richard Omedo and Gabriel Ayemba. Sheila Chajira and Maureen Morito lead the Lionesses in the women's competition, while Diana Omoso, Fresha Awino are some of the key players in the Cubs. Meanwhile, defending champions Shujaa and 2021 losing finalist Germany are the top seeds for this year's event. Shujaa headlines Pool A, which also features Red Whalers, Uganda, South Africa All-Stars and Tropic Sevens, while Germany headlines Pool B, which features Morans, Samurai, KCB and Western Province Select. The Lionesses headline the women's competition, which features Uganda, Tuk Sevens, Cubs and Tropic Sevens.
And Terry Norville wasted no time in challenging Toyota Gazoo Racing on their home turf, claiming victory on the Rally Japan's opening stage to take an overnight lead. Norville, who was locked in a battle for second place in the Drivers' Championship against Alfin Evans, narrowly edged out Hesapeka Lapi by seconds, while Oitanak, driving an M-Sport Ford Puma, trailed Norville by 1.4 seconds to round out the early podium positions.
Tani and Ren Fomax followed closely, while Toyota duo Sebastian Ogier and Elfs.
note, the Rally Japan, the penultimate round of the WRC is how we end tonight's edition of Sports. Thank you so much for watching. But Cynthia Nyamai is here to bring the curtains down on the prime edition of this lovely Thursday evening.
Yes, Okumu marks the end of tonight's bulletin, and remember, would love to hear from you. Some of your comments tonight was that you are looking forward to watch the game tonight. Also, someone did comment about the privatization bill law and said that that interview was a well-researched interview, and we do love to cover stories for you and get in-depth interviews for you so that you have the right information to make the right decisions. Well, from me and the rest of the team right here in studio, we would like to wish you a very good night.
Ni chuo kikuu cha burudani, mashavu.
Nyumbani kaumbea.
Burudani.
Twende tukacheze bango. Mama it takes two to tango.
Na interview kali kutoka Pwani.
Kucheza nawe. Baby nimechizi nawe.
Na ukitaka tuiwashe leo.
Bwana, kila siku ya Friday ama Ijumaa ukipenda saa 3 hadi saa 6 kamili.
Fanya kama unacheza isoko.
Kumbuka hashtag Masha. Nyumbani kwa burudani, usikose tegea show kali.
It's a cocktail of emotions, the puns that cracks up the family, greed that yields power and a hunger for success. Trends turn to foes. Survival for the fittest is the drive.
Who are we blackmailing?
But nothing beats the feud in a family where one disappears and another fights for the crown.
It was not supposed to go this far.
It's the desire to succeed that keeps us going, the deception that keeps us digging, and the laughter pill that keeps us living.
متغير ياما عن زمان قافل على قلبك البيبان حبيت وفارقت كم مكان.
Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam alituhimiza tutekeleze mambo ambayo natija yake ni kukaribia Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala na kupata radhi zake.
Je, wewe kama mwanadamu umeweza kuimarisha vipi mafungamano yako katika wewe kama mja na Mola wako tabaraka wa taala?
Balle balle balle.
Ile tanki moja ndiye anaweka sio ya simu na narudi anaosha anaweka maji
anaweka tena maji hapa.
Na kwa nini unalala?
Nifanye huko ndani tusi amku polisi.
Sasa unatupotezea wakati.
Mlipata hiyo maji ndio ilifanya mkao wa kwanza. Hiyo maji ndio ilileta shida. Kwa nini walikupani watu wakunywe uso ya watu?
Human faces ni choo waste.
Oh, ni kisungu mmepatilisha sasa.
Mmebadilisha wapi?
Nasikelea uchumi ya Kenya 75% of the GDP of the country anategemea nini? Ukimwangalia na katu kama exhaust anyway. Zura ukimwangalia watu matusi. Nimenyamaza siongei.
Hataki kujitetea.
Sitaki.